This podcast is part of the StartCast network, bringing you Europe's most promising startups. For more information, go to startcast.eu.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the first episode of StartCast, bringing you the most inspiring startups in Europe and around the world. My name is Asaf Zamil, and I'll be hosting our very first interview. My guest today is a really inspiring entrepreneur from London. With his venture called Pace4Life, he wants to revolutionize the access to pacemakers for developing countries. The venture was so groundbreaking that it got him an interview on the BBC. So let's listen to my interview with Lavan. Alright, so we're talking to Lavan. He's the founder of Pace4Life, which is a company for reusing used pacemakers, from what I understood. Could you tell us a little bit about your startup?
Yeah, so that's correct, Asaf. So Pace4Life is a not-for-profit, a charity based out of the UK, but operating globally, that is looking to reuse and recycle pacemakers. So we are looking to recycle pacemakers for their precious metals, but most importantly, we're also looking to reuse pacemakers, rather like organ donation, and implanting them in the developing world.
So what made you get into specifically the medical world?
I guess there's two things. I come from a science background, so I studied a master's in chemistry at Imperial College in London, and I've spent the last 10 plus years working in investment banking. So I think there's an element of enjoying the kind of the science type world, and secondly, probably to cleanse my soul.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to say that it's those are two completely different worlds.
Yes. No, I think I've been in the corporate world for quite a long time, working in investment banking and working in management consultancy in investment banking. And I've just wanted to do something a little bit more meaningful, something a bit more real, where I really felt like I was making a real difference and doing something that I really enjoyed. And I thought I'd always wanted to do something a bit more entrepreneurial. My dad has his own business. And so it was something that I wanted to give a go. I didn't know whether I'd really like it or not. And I ended up at a startup weekend for entrepreneurs, and that's where I ended up pitching the idea of reusing pacemakers. And out of 25 teams at Startup Weekend London in 2012, we came second out of 25 teams, and that just made me think, this is a good idea. Fine, it's a charity, it's not going to be some mega bucks idea, but I just felt that it was such a good idea. It'd be such a pity not to take it, learn from it, and evolve it, and then just see where it would go.
How do you handle you mentioned that you have a background in the business world, and this is obviously not your classic VC startup that someone is funding and expects a result after a year or 2 years. So how do you get your funding?
So yeah, you're right. It's not your typical kind of VC, Facebook, Instagram that's going to make some VC who puts in, say, $1 million, $100 million in a couple of years' time. But I think in the kind of the funny side, I think I got asked by a VC recently in San Francisco. He said, "So you're asking for half a $1,000,000, and is this correct that if I give that to you, I'm not going to make any return?" And I said to him, "You're right. I'm not going to make you any money, but what I can do is help you with your tax return."
Yeah, that's a classic.
But no, I think on the serious side, so I've been funding this a little bit out of my own pocket. I was also part of an accelerator program called Startup Chile, returning back to London in the beginning of June. So I was there from about October through to the end of May. It's a Chilean government-run accelerator program for startups and entrepreneurs from all over the world, and they gave me some funding that allowed me to pay myself, to develop Pace4Life, pay some basic living costs, and so forth. So that's kind of kept me going till the end of that program. And now that I've come back, I'm very much bootstrapped. I've rented out the flat I own in London, and I'm living at home with my parents, and I'm just ploughing ahead. So that's where I am.
And coming back to the technical side of pacemakers, what is the average life of a pacemaker, and do you worry about possible malfunctions?
No, so So I think the first thing is these pacemakers are being tested and sterilized, and we're going through a robust due diligence program. I've partnered up by the leaders in that, the University of Michigan, who've done a lot of research into the reuse of pacemakers. So, bearing in mind that I don't come from a medical background, it's important to make sure that you partner up, like any other business and any other startup, with the right people, with the right expertise who can guide you along the right processes, and they are very much at the forefront on them. So I'm very much taking the lead from them. They have been working with the Food and Drug Administration in America to make sure that that sterilization protocol is acceptable and deemed to be robust. We're not saying that these devices are the equivalent of a brand new devices, because they can't be. They've obviously been used and their battery life is diminished. A brand new device can last anything up to 15 years battery life, and we're looking at pacemakers with 70% battery life. So that's anything from about 7 years upwards, bearing in mind that some of the older devices tend to last up to 10 years. The sterilization is being done by an external company called Any Scientific, and then we'll be looking to export and implant in some of the developing countries such as Ghana, Pakistan, and Philippines, and Nicaragua, so forth.
So do Any Scientific, are they doing the tests as well?
Yes, so there's been a lot of research the university have done. They've been doing that over the last 4 years, and there will be tests on the devices to make sure that they have got a certain amount of rigidity, robustness about them from a mechanical point of view. And then obviously the sterilization is fit for purpose, so that we're getting rid of any of the foreign particles, making sure it's clean, basically the device is as good as possible. In layman's terms.
And let's talk a little bit about prices. So you're doing this obviously because there's much of a price difference between a new pacemaker and your used ones. Could you talk a little bit about that?
So a pacemaker in England, for instance, can cost anything up to £6,000. That's excluding surgery. What we're looking for in terms of refurbished pacemaker at the moment, I mean, these are still estimates, but just for refurbishing a device, buying an extra lead, because we'd have to buy new leads for these devices, it's looking at around about the $200-300 mark. And then there might be some associated costs on that. But I think that's like any other business. As you start to go through the volumes and you start to refine what you're doing, you can start to shave the costs off and make this thing more efficient. And then we'll be looking to partner with teaching hospitals and potentially charities and other organizations abroad who'll be able to kind of help implant these devices, so bringing such valuable healthcare at little to no cost.
So we're talking about 3% of the price, unless my math is incorrect.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one, because obviously you've got different pricing schemes that from, say, the Western world compared to the developing world. But I think the bottom line is what we're talking about is providing essential healthcare, an expensive healthcare to people who cannot afford them, and given a lower cost option, which allows us to potentially have a larger span in terms of the volumes that we can affect.
Do you already have some patients that have already installed your pacemakers?
No, so we are looking to get our export certificate from the FDA in the new year. That application is in the process, and then we will be looking to do the first implantations of reused pacemakers under the scheme, hopefully by the end of the first quarter, probably going into the second quarter next year, and then it'll be a slow process, so a bit of a small trial program where we'll be doing this across multiple countries, and then we'll look for the larger scale program. What we did do recently is, with my partners at the University of Michigan, who led a mission, we went to Ghana and implanted 5 brand new pacemakers donated to us by one of the big 4 manufacturers, Biotronic. And I think that really opened my eyes to what the cause and effect could be of implanting, either whether it's brand new pacemakers or used pacemakers, what effect this could really have on people. we essentially implanted 5 pacemakers into 5 patients there who couldn't afford this life-saving treatment, and the smiles in their faces is just kind of priceless.
No, definitely, it's life-changing. I hope you didn't do the implantation yourself.
No. You need highly skilled people, and this is why it's very important to kind of partner with the right people, the right institution who've got the right background. So I speak with Dr. Thomas Crawford at the University of Michigan every week, and he really is just really championing this cause, and it's great that we've kind of trying to create a global organization together.
So, on another topic, why pacemakers? So why heart disease? Is it as prevalent in your target countries as it is in countries like the UK or the US?
So cardiovascular disease is the biggest killer in the world today. It's the number one killer in the world today. And the need for pacemakers is becoming an increasing concern. I think it's estimated that there's about 2 million people die in the developing world because they cannot get access to such devices. And that's one of the things that we're looking to address. I think the key thing about the need for pacemaker is it's not necessarily attributed to a specific treatable condition or something, which not treatable condition, because somebody have got, say, they've got a cough and they've got overweight, they've got other health issues that lead to it. Typically, people develop the need for a pacemaker and the degradation of their valves because it's just something that occurs to people as nature as you get older. Sometimes people are born with it. So pacemaker is not something that's restricted to people who are old. I know people who've had pacemakers who are 11 years old. My auntie and uncle, for instance, actually have a pacemaker.
Is there some sort of data that you have for like percentage of I don't know, life saved due to pacemakers? Is there a real because I'm not really familiar with that topic, and I'm sure our listeners are not as well.
I think the best statistic that I can probably kind of quote is to kind of, I guess, amplify the disparity between the developed world and the developing world is in the developed world, 750 pacemakers are implanted per million inhabitants. Yet in the developing world, only 50, that's 50, are implanted per million. That shows the disparity in healthcare and affordability. Obviously, there are other factors to take into account, but even if you took a knife through that number, you're still talking about at least 375 per million. It's 325 per million. That is the massive difference. So that's a large amount of people that potentially need pacemakers in the world on an annual basis.
Yeah, definitely. Could you talk a little bit about your team? So how many people are you, and what are the different parts of everyone, if there is?
So Pace4Life is technically a one-man shop. I've recently got somebody called Rima Patel who's just decided to join Pace4Life. She showed a real interest in this, and she comes from kind of a not-for-profit but also an investment banking kind of background, and she's going to be helping me in kind of strategy and marketing. So she'll be working with me kind of part-time on top of a day-to-day job. I think those are the 2 people, myself who works on it full-time and Rima who just joined a few weeks ago. And then on top of that, I've just got a really strong team of advisors who I can call upon, or partners. So I've got obviously the University of Michigan, who I speak to all the time and are working on the single cause. I've got a couple of people called Lynn Chambers and Sally Nettleton from Stamp Productions. They've got a lot of experience in the kind of charity sector and the media sector because they do a lot of film productions, and they've just generally been quite helpful in advising me. I've got a couple of doctors like Dr. Stuart Allen from the University of Manchester, who's been advising me for the last 2 years almost, and who else? And Helen Holmes, who used to be head of legal at the Human Tissue Authority as part of the NHS. So I think we've got a good, strong team. It's not necessarily a full-on team like myself, maybe Rima, but people who've been like-minded, strong-minded, and willing to kind of support this cause and help out wherever possible. And that's why I think we've made a lot of progress. Most recently featuring on the BBC, on both radio, TV, internet, which went global, which meant that I then found a lot of funeral directors are signing up to what Pace4Life is trying to do. A lot of patients, a lot of next of kin are donating their pacemakers, and we're starting to collect them by the hundreds, if not thousands.
So basically, like as a full-time position, there is one employee in Pace4Life, and hundreds of people part-time, at least advising.
Yeah, advising or even just helping out in little ways wherever they can. I mean, I'm since the BBC, it's just things have just exploded. Things have got crazy, but in a good way.
I guess that's an advantage of a non-profit.
Yeah, I mean, the people always want to do something good, and I think a lot of people are conscious that it can be disruptive just trying to help in whatever way possible. Sometimes it's just trying to help in little ways is the best way. So people have been lending their expertise. When I was in Chile, people helped me design logos. Some people just gave me some advice on, SEO or Twittering or, various little things, and it all helps. What's the best way to just get some stuff done? Creating your website. How to manage your team and just things like that. Where's the best thing to kind of go out there and get some work done, or if you want to pay for something, what's the cheapest options? So I don't think it's just a not-for-profit. I think it's just that entrepreneurial kind of startup world. Everyone's willing to kind of help you. I think that's what I found in Chile. It was a great bunch of people, like-minded people, willing to help each other. They're not looking to steal your idea. They're just interested in what you're doing. It's I think, like most people, it's always interesting to find out what else somebody else is doing, because it's just different from what you're doing often, and it's a welcome distraction sometimes.
Yeah, it's that's the thing with the startup world. It's development for development's sake.
Yes, exactly.
Could you talk a little bit about the challenges and difficulties that you had along the way? Maybe some things that you couldn't really change, but you wish you could?
I think, to be honest, I know some people think of like, oh, you're doing a not-for-profit, your charity, but I kind of think of it as no different from another startup. You still have the same challenges of, you want to get yourself out there, you want to get awareness, you want to get the right people on board, you want to build a right team, you want to get funding. You're often living hand to mouth, living off your savings, living at your parents' garage or whatever. It's no different. Communication, trying to get people to kind of engage with you at the right times or even at all is difficult. But I think the key thing is like keep plugging away. Don't sell your soul too early. I.e., don't just go chasing money for the sake of it. If you don't need it, don't go chasing it. Just believe in what you're doing and keep plugging ahead. Progress just sometimes comes in spits and spurts, and I think that's what I found. But I think what I found over time is that those spits and spurts, instead of being widely apart, they've stopped to narrow, and they tend to happen more and more often. And things start to just turn themselves around for the positive.
So could you talk a little bit about how you got to the BBC? Because this is definitely something that not a big part of us is maybe ever going to do.
It was a bit of a chance conversation. So the BBC approached my partners in the University of Michigan because the idea of the reuse of pacemakers has always been around for quite a while. They passed them on to me and said, look, our partners are in the UK, Pace4Life. Why don't you speak to them? They then went very quiet. Nothing happened. They weren't particularly, it wasn't the hottest topic out there. And then a new journalist called Tulip Mazunda joined the BBC Health and jumped on the story. We did a few interviews about 3-4 months ago, and then it went a bit quiet. There was a lot of research being done in the background, and it was being mooted for September, October, maybe on TV. And suddenly BBC Southeast, a more regional arm of the BBC, jumped on the story and did a news piece and a little video. And that almost got the BBC World, the larger arm, interaction. So I think it was a bit of chance conversations, a bit of luck, but I think when you're doing something quite unique, these opportunities just fall on your lap often. And I think it's the same with any other startup. You often don't know what's around the corner, but if you keep plugging ahead, things happen. And I think things happen to people who try and do stuff. If you sit there inactive, nothing happens to you typically. But don't go looking for stuff. Just keep plugging away, and things work. It's like enjoy the journey. Don't necessarily look for the end goal. End goal's a bonus.
Yeah, I have to say that I've noticed, especially in the past few years with social media, it you can really see the cream going to the top because it's as fast as it has ever been. When many people like something, when something is high quality, it's really going to show on everyone's page.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like I think with social media, it's like it's interesting. People are always trying to get out there, but people are looking for something different. It's not about necessarily quantity; it's quality, and I think that's the same with anything you do.
So what was the direct BBC effect? What was the impact?
Um. It's been across the board. I've had people volunteering to help. From all different backgrounds and skills from all over the world. I've had people trying to donate their pacemakers from all over the world. I've had funeral directors approaching me and signing up to our scheme. I've had doctors saying they'd like to do implantations on our behalf, people who'd like to try and roll it out in their hospitals. I've had press agencies approach me. And even more weirdly, I've had people who are friends and colleagues contact me saying, "Hey, I saw you on the internet. I saw you on TV." I had an old colleague who now lives in Mauritius saying he saw me on TV. I had a friend who said he read about me on the internet and watched the videos from Australia. I had a girl I met traveling in Vietnam, Cambodia, who now lives in Africa, in Tanzania, messaging me saying, I'm in the pub. Don't know if you remember me, but I'm reading about you in the paper." And she sent me a scan of the paper in the Tanzanian news. So it made me realise that I thought the BBC coverage was just going to be maybe a little clip on the internet, a little radio thing. I ended up doing about 25 radio interviews across all the major channels, Radio 1, Radio 4, Radio 5. Obviously went on the BBC World News across the world. They also, I found out, syndicate their content. So other newspapers and journalists across the world take the story and look to reproduce it in their form, in their local languages often, and it goes across the world. So there are news reports on the internet I've found over time in Russia, Poland, Cyprus, Malta. It's crazy. It's gone out of this world. I really couldn't expect it to be that big.
The fastest way to get media attention without marrying royalty.
Yeah, possibly. And I'm not wearing a nice dress for Pippa Middleton.
Oh yeah, that's another investment. All right, I'm pretty much done with the questions that I wanted to ask. I was wondering if there is anything that you specifically want to request from our listeners.
I think the key thing from the listeners would be go to our website. Our website is www.pace4life. That's PACE, the number 4, life, life.org. Go and have a look at our videos, look at what we do, look on our YouTube channel, look on our Facebook channel. Get in contact with me if you'd like to kind of help out, you'd like to find out more. We aren't just limited to the UK. We are working in the US with my partners at the University of Michigan, and we are looking to expand across the world. I know that people often say they don't know, they don't really have skills, but often there's a lot of hidden skills that can be of benefit to organizations like us, whether it's on a longer term basis or even just a short term. You can be of help, and just spread the word.
Mm-hmm. So simply, if somebody wants to donate his time or expertise, he should just contact you?
Yeah, drop me an email. My details are on the website, or it's lavan@pace4life.org. But you can contact me via the website. If you're local, you can even give me a call anytime, and we can have a catch up. See how you can help, whether it's just even spreading the word, do it via Facebook or Twitter and so forth, and we can take it from there.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks a lot for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to StartCast. We are currently gathering as many interviews as possible with the most inspiring and interesting startups around the world. If you have a startup or you know anyone that has his own startup, feel free to contact us at contact@startcast.eu. And you can contact me at Asaf, that's ASAF, at startcast.eu.